I think now we can come with joy and alleluia to the word of the Lord as we come to our second reading. Our second reading from today is from Genesis chapter 22, verses 1 through 19. Now this passage has been traditionally titled as God Tests Abraham. However, some rabbis have also suggested that Abraham is testing God, while others are still suggesting that it is Isaac who passes as the faithful servant tested true. So many of you have heard this passage time and time again, so as you hear it today, I invite you to pick a new perspective. Choose one of the characters and experience it from their point of view. Maybe you will watch through Abraham's eyes, a father who has already lost one son, Ishmael, and is now asked to sacrifice another. Or maybe you will listen as Isaac, who has heard about his own mysterious birth as a gift from his father to God, but has yet to develop a faith of his own. Or maybe you will choose to watch as Abraham's servants, who are kept slightly out of view, even though they must have wondered what was going on. Maybe you will even imagine yourself as Sarah, Abraham's wife, who waited at home, wondering who would come home that day from the journey. Whether you are imagining as a willing or doubtful servant of the Lord God of Abraham, listen for the word of the Lord in our text for today. After these things, God tested Abraham. God said to him, "Abraham," and he said, "Here I am." God said, "Take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains that I shall show you." So Abraham rose early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took two of his young men with him, and his son Isaac. He cut the wood for the burnt offering, and set out and went to the place in the distance that God had shown him. On the third day, Abraham looked up and saw the place far away. Then Abraham said to his young men, "Stay here with the donkey. The boy and I will go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you." Abraham took the wood of the burnt offering and laid it on his son Isaac, and he himself carried the fire and the knife. So the two of them walked on together. Isaac said to his father, "Abraham, Father!" And Abraham said, "Here I am, my son." Isaac said, "The fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" Abraham said, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." So the two of them walked on together, and when they came to the place that God had shown him, Abraham built an altar there and laid the wood in order. He bound up his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then Abraham reached out his hand and took the knife to kill his son. But the angel of the Lord called to him from the heavens and said, "Abraham, Abraham." And again he said, "Here I am." He said, "Do not lay your hand on the boy or do anything to him. For now I know that you fear God, since you have not withheld your son, your only son, from me." And Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught in a thicket by its horns. Abraham went and took the ram and offered it up as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place, "The Lord will provide." As it is said to this day, "On the mount of the Lord it shall be provided." The angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time from heaven and said, "By myself I have sworn, says the Lord, because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son. I will indeed bless you, and I will make your offspring as numerous as the stars of heaven and as the sand that is on the seashore. and your offspring shall possess the gate of their enemies. And by your offspring shall all the nations of the earth gain blessing for themselves, because you have obeyed my voice." So Abraham returned to his young men, and they arose and went together to Beersheba, and Abraham lived there at Beersheba. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Like any test, we see that the first step of doing well is showing up and being present. The rest follows as a reflection of either your gifts in life or your preparation for the task set before you. So as you were present this morning and listening, what did you think? Who was testing whom? Who passed? Well, it appears to me that whoever was testing whom, they all passed with flying colors. Little Isaac has passed for not only trusting his earthly father, but also his heavenly source of life and future. He doesn't just show up for the journey. He shows up and stays put even when his future looks very dim. He is curious about what it seems he and his father are doing on this bonding trip, but his bravery and innocence will be compared later with Christ, even as a reflection of Abraham's assurance to Isaac that the Lord will do the providing on the mountain. And here's where God shows up. God passes the test of truth and reveals something new and yet as old as time. This God, our God, the God of Abraham and Isaac, stops Abraham from completing the offering. God says, "Hey, I'm different, and my ways are different." Even though it seems like this would be a normal request, that these are things that other people do for other gods, I want to provide a different way. As you can see, this ram is already prepared to die, and he may provide salvation for Isaac, and in that pave the way for the flourishing of the people of Israel. Many centuries later, the kings of Judah will begin to offer sacrifices of their children, forgetting that their God is the God which saved their ancestors from death, for a life of blessing to their people and others. The one and only God is the one who saved Abraham's firstborn, the one who saved the firstborn of the Hebrews during the plagues against Egypt, the one who wants to save not just their firstborn sons, but all of their children. And just as God upholds the covenant of blessing already made, we also see the faithful walk of Abraham. He answers the call to go and worship, and he goes prepared for whatever God might do. He passes the test with an almost disturbing and unwavering obedience. He shows no doubt, no sadness, no anger. In fact, his strength of commitment is so strong that he has been praised throughout the ages for his willingness to do whatever God might ask. But the striking compliance comes from a man who is no stranger to the strange ways of God. Abraham has been on crazy roads with God before, and Abraham expects no different this time. He goes where God has shown him, but he keeps his eyes open for the unexpected. On the surface, it seems like he is blindly responding to what he believes God is calling him to do, but deep within, Abraham is continuing to seek for God's presence in the midst of it. This church is no stranger to the strange and wondrous callings of God. Although it seems to be all I can talk about now, I actually came late into the story of our ministry in Polička, Czech Republic. As many of you know, my family was one of those that became very close with Anna and Jan Deuce and their kids, while Jan was serving our church and Cimarron Presbyterian back in 2002 and 2003. I was finishing my undergraduate at Oklahoma State, but I remember coming home and celebrating holidays with their family as part of our own. My mother and sister went on that first mission trip to Polichka, and they came back sharing with me and my dad about how rocky and marvelous the road was for that first trip. They were up against many obstacles, but God provided for them around every corner, on top of every mountain. Some of you will remember how the goal of that first camp was to just build friendships with the Czech people and help the non-church members in Polichka to feel comfortable walking through the doors of the church. That may still seem a little absurd to us, maybe even a little weak. I mean, what's the big deal about going into a church? But at that time, there were many misconceptions about Christians and a strong distrust of the church and its use of power over others. I felt this immediately at my very first English camp, even though it was the third time our church had commissioned a group of people to go to Polichka and provide the camp. Every morning of the camp, we begin with a few energizers, and this is one of the marks of our American camp. In case you have not been fortunate enough to experience an energizer at the camp or VBS or Dwight Mission and other camps, it is essentially a choreographed dance to a popular song. This week, the youth helped me create a video that will help our volunteers teach the volunteers for this camp. And it was very important for us to show them what it's like and get them energized for camp. At the English camp, we stress using words to encourage them to speak English, but a huge part of it is just having fun and enjoying yourself with one another. I see it as part of the relationship-building time as we learn to have fun and laugh with one another. All the volunteers and teachers lead by not being afraid of looking silly in front of the kids, and it breaks down barriers and connects us in a very different way. But I remember the summer of 2006 in particular, because there was a grandparent who had come to watch their child and see what these church people were really doing with her grandson. She didn't stay long enough to hear some of the translations or see the opening skit, but what she thought she saw was kids being brainwashed into doing and saying things they didn't understand. And this touched on an even greater fear. She had lived that life under the communist regime. She had watched it happen where one group told another what to do and required their ultimate submission. She did not want that for her child. Pastor Don talked with her and assured her that this was not what was happening. There were many intense moments and days, but this was all part of us trying to communicate that this is not what the church is about, and that this is not what God is about. Our church does not want to tell you what to think and how to act. We believe that our God does not want us to become robots of submission. This was even what Paul was trying to tell the Galatians in the passage from chapter 3 that we just read. When he was looking back to Abraham as the father of faith, he insisted that God was not requiring the mindless completion of tasks according to the law. Paul asked them, "The only thing I want to learn from you is this. Did you receive the Spirit by doing the works of the law or by believing what you heard?" And he rewords the question just to see if they get it. Does God supply you with the Spirit and work miracles among you by your doing the works of the law, or by your believing what you heard? Paul wants them to know that God is the one at work within them. Abraham received the gift of faith directly from God, and we have access to that same faith as a gift of the Spirit working within us. Receiving this gift requires an openness and a presentness. Abraham was willing to be present and watch for what God would do. Throughout this passage, Abraham states his presence 3 times. First, as an answer to call, "Here I am." Next, as an answer to his son, "Here I am." And third, as an answer to the messenger of God, "Here I am." In English, it sounds like he's merely stating his location. But in Hebrew, this response sounds more like, "Look, behold me here before you, ready and willing." In fact, Abraham does not go in headstrong to do exactly what he heard God calling him to do. Instead, he methodically begins the journey one step at a time, cutting the wood and setting forth on a 3-day journey and making himself available for what God would make possible. The strength that he had to set forth on that journey came into response to the gifts that he had already received from God, and the faith that God is the one who can bring life even out of death. For even before that day, Abraham had witnessed God bring life out of that which was already dead, because his wife Sarah had become pregnant well after her time of menopause. So not only had she been previously barren, but her actual reproductive organs within her had ceased to be able to produce life. Abraham's faithfulness and willingness to follow God's request didn't come out of a disregard for his son's health or well-being, but it came out of a recognition that Isaac is essentially not his own to give. Abraham had received Isaac as a miracle from God once before, and now he was ready to watch God perform another miracle. Jesus showed the same faith as he chastised the Pharisees. He said to them, "It makes no difference about what blessings you think you deserve, for God can raise up descendants for Abraham even out of these stones." Jesus and Abraham both displayed that our gifts and callings do not belong to us, but to God. And when we offer them back to God, we receive back in ways that we could never expect or even imagine. This year, we are seeing a return of our gifts to Polichka. It's a very amazing moment. When there was no longer an American available to write the curriculum for the English camp, several of our strongest volunteers stepped forward to say they would plan it if we would only come and be present. I was concerned in the beginning that they were just trying to get us to come and visit. We always knew that there would come a day when we would have to let go of the English camp and let other programs develop. Maybe some of you knew that too. So I asked Yarda to ask the group, "Why do you want to do this? Is it just to spend time with the Americans, or is it about spending time with the children?" Without a thought, he replied to me, "Both." They love to see us, but the volunteers now have the ultimate desire to share the camp with more and more kids. Why? Because it has made a difference in their lives and affected the way that they see the world. Many of those on the planning team have visited this congregation. Shemek, Yarda, Petra, and Yitka were all here and greatly affected by their experiences with this congregation and our friends throughout this Presbyterian. As they have written the curriculum, they have designed spaces for them to share their experiences about American culture and how we don't fit the stereotypes that they see in the movies. But what shocked me was their desire to also share their experiences with the church and with God. One tradition that has developed as a part of our camp has been our Wednesday night talk show with the Black Sheep, Terne Ofze, the youth rock band that I helped start when I was there. The group plays a few songs, and then someone is interviewed about their life and how they live out their faith in God. This year, the non-church members, the questioning, the wondering, have asked us that they might have space to share with others about their testimonies, about the camp, how it's been an important part of their lives, and how they've seen God, and what they've seen about being a Christian. They want to experience about how they have experienced God and the church through the English camps and their time here. When I heard this, I felt like God was saying, just by showing up and being a part of what I've been doing, others have been drawn into a desire to know more about me and more about each other. When we began these English camps and the English classes, we were helping the church to reach out to the community, and now we are witnessing them reaching back to us. Instead of building the bridge in one direction from the church to the community, many non-church members have now extended their help to meet our bridge somewhere in the middle. It's almost as if a messenger of God has come to us to say, see, you thought you were making the journey and the sacrifice all by yourselves, when all along I was providing a way for an even greater blessing for you and many communities of people. The road before our team this summer will put many of us to the test and has already tested some of us. But all the same, I am sure that many of you are facing journeys of your own, where you will be tested or are already being tested. But let us rest in the knowledge that we worship the God who accompanies us on that road, the God who has traveled the road before us, and the God who has already suffered the ultimate test, that we might receive the gift of grace in order that we might be a blessing to one another. So let us practice openness and presentness on our travels this summer, as we make ourselves available for what God has in store for us. As a way of committing to this openness and presentness and awareness of God walking with us, we're going to sing a song that may be familiar with some of you, but may be new to some of you as well. It's in your hymnal. It's number 407. I think you will still get some of the words on the screen. But I'm going to sing the first verse for you in Spanish. And if you speak Spanish and would like to sing all of the verses in Spanish, feel free to sing along with me and sing along continuing throughout. But I will invite you all to join me on the second verse in English. I'll sing the third verse in Spanish, and you can choose to sing at that time in Spanish or in English on the third verse. But then on the fourth verse, let us all join together in English and sing together.
Cuando el débil la
now it is time for us to offer ourselves and our gifts back to God. For that which we have is only a gift that we have from God. And let us give with the faith that God will do something wondrous with our gifts.